Good afternoon, welcome to the second annual Women's and Entertainment event at Five Towns College.
Oh, this is all about everybody. I get a heads up before everybody else.
Today's event is sponsored by the FTC Business Division.
I know what I'm going to do. You're going to be like the president? You know, like this. So I am here.
This is what I'm allowed to say in public, and this is what I'm going. This is my agent cleared. That's a fantastic question.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second annual Women's and Entertainment event at Five Towns College. Today's event is sponsored by the FTC Business Club in celebration of Women's History Month. I am Leah Chambers, president of the Business Club, and this is my co-host, Sam Winter. Today you will hear from some amazing women in the women's entertainment business. Our panelists come from a variety of industries, including gaming, marketing, radio, producing, songwriting, and engineering.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam Winter. We're going to begin this panel by letting the guests introduce themselves a little, starting with Jenna.
Hi, my name is Jenna Lomonico. I'm currently the head of U.S. marketing at 1RPM, which is a label distributor. I have 16 years of music industry experience. Formerly, I was at Island Records. I've worked with artists like Mumford & Sons, Demi Lovato, Shawn Mendes, The Killers, and so on. I've been very lucky.
My name is Tiana Grata. I work for Cox Media Group Long Island, which is WBAB and WBLI. I've been there for about 10 years. Done a variety of things. Currently, I'm the office manager, and I help with a lot of recruiting. But I was the internship supervisor for like 8 years. And simultaneously, I run a travel blog, so I work with travel brands and tourism boards across the world.
Hello. I am Dina Crease, co-founder of MusicWorks Virtual Studios, founder of the Music and Gaming Castle, and I've been in audio for over 16 years. I ran a luxury facility along with Krista Burge for about 10 years, and then once COVID hit, we had to close our facility, and we totally morphed the business into a virtual online mix and mastering business. So we now provide professional services to clients all over the world now. We're not just limited to New York City. So that's what we're doing on a global scale. And then I also started a music and gaming company, which focuses on, it's a creative hub essentially for gamers and creators of all ethnicities and all diversity. So I'm trying to bring diversity into the gaming industry.
Hi guys, my name is Ali. Like Tiana, I work at CMG Long Island, and I am the morning show co-host at WBLI. Also the night show host there as well. I've been there for about, 4 years, and 3 years on air. Kind of dabbled in a few things before that, but
She was my intern.
I was.
Oh, no way! See, y'all know each other.
Yeah, we know each other.
And I'm in the middle. Y'all see this?
That'd break us up.
All right.
Hi everyone, I'm Deborah Prywes. I've been in the workforce for over 20 years now, so across a variety of the business side of entertainment. So started out in publishing at Money Magazine, moved into gaming. I worked on the Mary-Kate and Ashley line of video games back when they were teenagers. So I did their driving game.
Yes.
And I do not have the audio and I guess with public speaking experience of some of my counterparts here. But fun fact, I used to do the voiceover on the trailers because I grew up in California and I guess my diction was pleasing to people. But I've worked at home entertainment on the Scholastic and A&E home entertainment brands, launched A&E across a variety of formats, but also launched them on iTunes, Netflix streaming, so kind of that whole digital transformation. Moved into online video and ad tech, streaming services. I headed up a product team for making a SaaS platform to create your own Netflix-like experience across a variety of different platforms. And now I'm at a company called Super Awesome. We are on a mission. We have the products to make the internet safe for kids. Super Awesome was bought by Epic Games about a year ago. So now we are working on making the metaverse safe for kids.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
It's such amazing. To all of you guys, why did you choose your line of work?
I will say, so I actually went to school for audio and engineering, and and I worked at a studio for about 2 years, and I ended up running the studio, and I realized that I liked the business side of it more, so I ended up going back to being an intern. I started working at a PR firm doing what was then called new media, which is now digital marketing. That's how old I am. And yeah, I just realized that my love was for the marketing side more than the creation side.
I actually had no interest in radio. I kind of fell into it. I went to college for media, but my focus was journalism, and I wanted to do like world crisis, which is hence how I got into travel blogging. Also, when I graduated from college, there was no such thing as blogging, not to age myself either, but, and I ended up working on like a news format college radio show, and then it kind of just led to being at BAB and BLI, and I love it. So now I'm like happy that I decided to end up in radio, but yeah, so I get to do both things kind of simultaneously.
Amazing.
I guess I always just saw myself in front of the board. Like, you know, there's always a period of your time when you're like, what am I gonna do for the rest of my life when you're young? And then I just saw an image of me like in front of a master board of all these buttons and stuff. And then, so I knew engineering was always my calling, but I never would have thought engineering would just be a vehicle for other avenues of things in my life. And for me to express myself through my other talents, you know, and to reach other creatives and to build community via my engineering. You know, I never really, I never understood that was its sole purpose, and I see it now. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Well, for me, kind of like Tiana, I had no interest in radio, which is funny now that I'm on air, but I was actually looking to be in TV broadcast. I had my reel put together, I was ready to go out, and during my senior year of college, I was starting to look for internships. And I'm like, well, media is so broad that you could get an internship anywhere. So I think I was coming to BLI one day to like pick up Long Island Ducks tickets that I won, like something basic like that. And Tiana was sitting behind the desk, and I was like, do you guys happen to do internships here? And I didn't know I was talking to the internship coordinator over here. So she was like, yeah, we do. So I applied, and I got it on the second try. And it was just like a process of really kind of immersing myself in every different department and trying to see where I fit, and landed on air.
For me, my job didn't exist when I went to college. So I was a cognitive science major. I fell in love with video games at my first internship, and it just kind of led me on this path. And I think I ended up here because I learned to open the door when opportunity knocked and try new things.
So to everyone, who are some of your biggest influences for what you do now and why? Maybe Ali?
I gotta think about that, hang on.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I would say, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Julie Greenwald, who is one of the heads of Atlantic Records. And I always, am amazed at the success that she's able to have as being a mother and still being wildly successful. And, I think that as women, we are often always fighting against like evolving as a human while also being successful in business. And so, I don't know, that's somebody that I've always kind of looked at as like, this is possible, and just like hustle and make it happen.
Oh, one of my mentors is the marketing director at my job, so no one will know who she is, but shout out to Nancy Cambino, who single-handedly like runs BLI and all the marketing, and is just like this powerful woman who just like can do anything. She's very like motivational. And just like me, I never wanted to have kids. I don't care about getting married, and she's like that, and it just like is a nice future to see somebody who's like 20 years older than me, who's like living that life.
Just independent.
Yeah, like that. And I think a lot of times women don't have those role models, or like it's still kind of like structured to where you're supposed to get married and want to have kids. So it's nice to see people like her, and it's like if you want a broader spectrum, Chelsea Handler is somebody that creates great content. She writes, she does documentaries, she like delves into like politics, and like so she's somebody else I really look up to. And then the other one's a man, but it's still Anthony Bourdain. So for the travel side, like when I started watching his stuff, that's why I started doing my blog, like geared more towards food and how food and culture kind of intertwine. And I think he's such an inspiration. I mean, sadly he passed, but so those are like my big ones for me.
I have to say, in my field, I kind of, you know, in terms of looking up to people, I kind of look to people. So like, kind of like I have mentorships, you know, I have like 2 mentors that I go to. And then and like, you know, they're successful in their own thing, but they're able to give me constructive criticism as someone who loves me and want me to be successful. So, you know, I look to Krista Burge, my partner, Cristo Santillas, you know, people who could keep my mind sharp in the avenues of where I'm working, in the audio field. Yeah, this just came out, check this, you gotta be on top of this, you know, and then also people you can call for that mental health support also. So it's nice when I have people I can, you know, kind of just keep it real with on both sides of the field, because it's perspective. It's a different perspective you have talking to somebody who doesn't understand your personal situation, giving you advice, as opposed to somebody who's, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like, especially the mental health side of things. Like, for me, someone who I really look up to is a coworker of mine. Her name's Kiana. She's on in the afternoon. But she is someone, yeah, she's awesome.
Interesting.
Isn't she the best? She's the best. But so she was on air before I was, and for me coming to BLI, I, like, as a person of color, I was able to see her, and like, we're the same heritage, so I was able to see her and be like, damn, like, she's doing it, right? Like, she's killing it, and it made me feel like I could do that too, and like, why not, right? So she is someone that I very much look up to creatively. We always lean on each other mental health wise, so she's someone that I definitely look up to. Also Oprah Winfrey, again, another powerful woman of color who her interview skills are something that I always try to match, and I'm always trying to learn through her.
I found a lot of my mentors at work, and I think there are 3 who were key. One is Susan Margolin, who was one of the co-founders of New Video, which was the agency that I worked at, where we put out the A&E home entertainment line. She was older than me, kind of showed me what you could do. She had 2 kids, and it's been really interesting watching kind of like the women ahead of me in business navigate just the insanity, plus, you know, some had kids, some didn't, but I still remember. The other is Sarah Wood, who was one of our co-founders at Unruly. And at the time I was at Unruly, I had 2 small boys. My boys are now 12 and 14, and they were like 3 and 5 at the time. And like, I mean, utter chaos. Their dream in life was like to come to work with me, because we had like video games, and I could never bring both of them at once because that would just be a disaster. So I'd split this up and frankly use it as a behavior incentive. But you know, I would sit there and commiserate with Sarah, who would say these things to me. Here she was running this company that she had built from, you know, 6 people in like a leaky room to this like, you know, 300 person plus global enterprise. And she would say, I forgot to send out birthday invitations for Ezra's 8th birthday. And you know, you think that's preposterous, but like, no. I can completely see how that would happen. So it kind of showed me that like life is messy, and you just need to try to do what you can as much as you can. And sometimes you'll forget to send out birthday invitations, and that's okay too.
What keeps you guys motivated to continue working in your field?
The fact that I don't see what I want to do out there. So that's what kind of motivates me to really keep on going and to create it so that people can see what I see. So that's my motivation.
I think just the goal to strive for greatness and to prove that you can do great things. I think that, you know, going into music in general, like when I told my family, they were like, what? And like, just, you know, that motivation to prove everyone wrong when I was younger and still like starting out, I think I try to keep that with me, you know, because I think it's a good motivation and a good way to not like rest on your laurels.
For me, radio in particular is a very male-dominated industry, and I feel, you know, now that I am a co-host on a morning show, I feel like I almost like have a responsibility to other women and like young girls who are listening, who are like, that could be me in like 20 years, you know, like I'm only 25, so I think it's important to just like keep that message going for younger girls and like always represent to them.
I think for me, it's a few things. One is I've found, I love startup, scale up life. I like that it's a little messy and like needs some forming. But it also tends to attract really smart people who just inspire me to bring my A game every day so I don't let them down. It helps me to continue to learn, which I've learned is really important to me. And now, I really look for mission-based companies. So the fact that Super Awesome is on a mission to make the internet safer for kids, building a safer internet and now a safer metaverse, it is my job as, I don't know that I mentioned what I do, I'm the head of global marketing and insights there. So in terms of crafting a narrative, but looking at all the different pockets of the company and trying to surface what we do. So whether customers come with us or not, I at least want them to have the tools to do the right thing.
So I guess that's like, there's two answers for me. With media, like with working in radio, it's very much like what Ali said, the new generation, motivating people to get involved, diversifying radio, gender-wise, culturally, racially, like these are things that have been historically white male dominated, right? Yeah. And then the same thing on the travel side, I guess too, but that's more about being able to present information to people who might not have information about certain countries or certain cultures and stigmas that, are attached to those. And I hope that through writing about them and going to them, it just shows that the world isn't as dangerous as everybody thinks it is, that everybody's very similar and we all want the same things for our families and our friends and like in life. And so I guess on both sides, it's about that.
Also motivation from those bills packing up. I get my Chase bill every month and I'm like, all right, cool, I'm going to work.
And then you know what, to add to what you're saying, because it's also a really big thing of mine, who I let in. So I'm all about positivity and because I realize one negative person could just destroy everything, and you don't want to do that. I want to create a nice, safe space for people. So that's the one thing I like. People know that, people always say to me, they're like, Nina, I love that. Wherever you at, I know it's going to be good vibes, And so I always will keep that in the back of my mind. I have to keep that, be careful the company you keep, I guess, at the end of the day. Yeah. And to have, have your arms open, but only open to those who are willing to live by what, you're saying, who has the same integrity as you.
That's a nice compliment too. When someone says you bring the good vibes. Like,
That's why it's not just your skill that matters, it's who you are as a person and what you bring with your personality to the job for sure.
Yeah, negativity can just crash everything, and you see that in like corporate atmospheres or like in team atmospheres all the time. So one person can like really ruin it sometimes for everyone else when it comes to projects and stuff. So
and in the metaverse especially, that's the one thing that we really pride ourselves on. Anybody who's throwing events, we all tend to, you have to find your 10%. We always say so. You find your groups and you let people know who's toxic. That's always a conversation. Who's toxic? Yeah. And so word, it's a small verse. It's a small multiverse too. So word gets around. This user, boom, 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 did this to my event. Said racial slurs. Said this. They are very toxic to our community. Just letting you know. Boom, and word gets around. And so I guess that's a part of the the networking and keeping the safe, creating a safe space. Yeah.
They say that about radio too. It's a very small group, so everybody in radio talks. So if you do bad at one place, you are not getting hired somewhere else. Because it's a small universe, even though it's a huge universe. So it is important.
So do you think in order to reach equality as women in our industries, we should focus on the fact that we're women, or do you think gender doesn't really matter?
I mean, of course gender matters, right?
Girls rule, like, come on.
I think just automatically we are still need to fight a little bit harder and prove ourselves a little bit more. But I think that we're at a really amazing time in history because there was a time where culture perpetuated this like women have to compete against one another thing.
Yes.
And I think now we lift each other up. We support each other and we praise each other and we help each other get ahead. And I think that that's a really special thing. But you know, it's a fact of life of like, you know, we still get paid less and we need to fight a little bit harder, and it's part of it, but you don't let that get you. You know, you just fight harder.
Yeah, focus is an interesting word in that question, and I think that it's important to not hold yourself back. But I don't know that I really focus on, you know, being female at work. But I know that like being a woman in tech is considered like an anomaly, which is interesting. So suddenly you kind of become a representative of a system, maybe more than you intended. And something that I had to figure out back in college, I mean, frankly, I think it was, I took this one philosophy class, and, you know, class participation was part of my grade. And I was like, oh, you know, and I had to really force myself to, you know, set small goals. Be like, you're going to speak twice in this class. And I was like, all right, we can do this. And I find, you know, it is so easy to not get noticed at work. So it's really important to, you know, I'm going to come into this meeting, and I'm going to have a point of view, and I'm going to have an objective, and I will be heard. And, you know, some of the women who have helped mentor me over the years, when I started at Unruly, I mentioned Sarah Wood, you know, we had this company-wide meeting, and I had just started and had nothing to offer about like what the marketing team had been up to. And she's like, Deborah, if you just get up there and say baked beans over and over again, you need to get up there, and people need to know who you are. And I think these are the types of things that maybe as a woman, you know, I don't want to speak for a whole gender, I can speak for myself, might be a little harder. And, you know, in some of the unconscious bias training that I've had over the years, you know, it's a statistic out there that women are less likely to apply for a job if they don't feel like they check every box on that job description. Whereas for men, if they check 60% of the boxes, they're like, yeah, I got this. You know, so this is advice that I usually try to share, especially as I mentor college students, like just go for it. You know, put yourself out there. You might have qualities they don't know they're looking for.
What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly.
And just to that note too, I feel like women, me specifically, especially, but like I have a tendency to always think more of the negative things, and like I don't know like why that is, but I feel like when I talk to other women, they think the same things too. All the reasons why I'm not qualified, instead of the reasons why I am qualified. So I think in the industry, we need to start telling people that the women that you are qualified, and really start honing that in. So as a focus, I would say you need to, you know, tell women that they're capable and qualified when they are.
And I think particularly we're a little lucky because we have a lot of female representation where we work. Like out of the 8 department heads, 6 are women, and our general manager is a woman, and the CEO of our company was a woman for a very long time until recently. And there's a lot of women throughout the company that hold high positions. So I feel like that's lucky because I never feel like I need to be less than. And I feel like sometimes women, and this is going to be very general, but guys don't feel like they have to try as hard all the time as women do. And for interviewing for the past 8 years, I noticed men do not give as good of interviews as women do. And I don't know if that's because they often think they already have it or they don't need to work as hard, but women interview better than men. And I have interviewed hundreds of people, and I've noticed that trait. And so that has to be something culturally, right? That has to be this like confidence that we give men, that like men are expected to be leaders, men are expected to do these things, but women aren't expected to be leaders. So we have to try harder to be leaders, to be CEOs of companies, to do things. And I think that is shifting, and we're seeing that shift, but I don't think it's there yet.
But that's because we've been told our whole lives it's a man's world and not a woman's world.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and it is a man's world. And the system is built that way. So it's like when they say the system's broken on all aspects, it's not broken. It was built to keep women and people of color down, and it's going to continue to do that unless we fight against it. So.
And change it.
Yep.
The new generation has to do that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So it's up to you guys.
No, but it's kind of a wonderful thing that just by, you know, living, I think every generation hopefully is getting better. And I remember, you know, my younger son back when he's a tough cookie, but like, you know, back when he was in 2nd grade and they were talking about they're sitting Martin Luther King Jr. in school and talking about, fairness and what do you think is the right thing to do and what would you change? And he came home with his little ditto, with his like terrible, 7-year-old scrawl, and he's like, I think men and women should make the same amount of money. And I'm like,
That is a fact.
he's like, yes, something's getting through.
We'll get there. But you know what? Let me tell you, that was one of the reasons why I used to play basketball, funny enough. And that was one of the reasons why I never even looked twice at the WNBA, because I looked at the salary difference. I said, hold up.
True.
You mean to tell me I'm waking up at 5 a.m., I'm doing the same amount of work as them, I'm playing the amount of game. Hold up. And I was just like, no, that's not right. And I just, after college, I just stopped playing.
Right, and then you see what happened with professional soccer and the women professional athletes, took on that system.
Yeah.
It's true.
Nothing changes if you don't take it on, right? So.
That is true also. Early on in your careers, what experiences have you encountered and what did you learn from those experiences? Yeah, it's a hard question.
Very broad. I don't know if I can think of a specific thing from earlier on in my career. I do feel like I'm constantly learning things and constantly having situations where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do this, and or now this is something that I'm really concentrated on. Like over the last year or so, like my company shifted its focus to like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I now run that committee for us. And now I'm heavily involved with corporate decisions that are being made. And for me, like, these things that are happening even in our culture are changing me, and I almost feel like I was more oblivious when I was younger and didn't realize maybe the things were happening to me, or like that they weren't good or I needed to fight against them. And it's only, I would say, in the last decade where I feel like I've had more of these like life-changing epiphanies. Like I was waitressing for a really long time and I had a degree and I was traveling and I was like, why am I not using my degree? Like, and then suddenly I was like, in order to make more money and to work in the entertainment field, I have to invest in myself. So I like quit my waitressing job, which was crazy because that's how I made all my money, and was not making a lot of money in radio, and the blog wasn't making any money at the time. But within a year or two of that, the blog started becoming like actual income, and then I ended up getting promoted at the radio station, and that shifted like the last decade of my life and in ways that I like couldn't imagine, And in the last 2 years, like just with, all the stuff that's been happening culturally, it shifted again for me. It opened up my eyes to perspectives that maybe I didn't realize before, and like, how could you not realize them before? And sometimes it just takes something, unfortunately, terrible happening for that to like change you. But I think, and I would like to think that for the rest of my life, I will constantly be pivoting and I will constantly be changing and growing, and so I don't know if it always happens when you're young. Sometimes it happens like constantly throughout your career.
I would say a lesson that I learned that's really important for women is when I had like my first more corporate music industry job, I was a senior manager and I wanted to be VP. And I kept waiting for it because I felt that somebody had to offer it to me for me to deserve it. And then a mentor said to me, no, you're never gonna get anything unless you ask for it. So you're gonna put in an argument about why you deserve that promotion and why you deserve a raise to go with it, and you're gonna fight for it. And from then on, like, I never wait to deserve something. I know when I deserve it and I'm gonna fight for it.
Tell us.
That is
It's a good point. It is the company's job to not pay you one more cent than it takes to not lose you. So, it's not in their interest. And to that note, I think there are like 3 short examples. One is when I was like in my early 20s, I had this like terrible boss. And I was the 8th person to leave in like a 2-year period because this person was just so I guess emotionally abusive. I don't know that we had the vocabulary back then. And so I realized, luckily young, because I think everyone kind of finds a terrible boss at some point in his or her career, what I will and will not tolerate. So I think that was important because, right, you can leave if you can't change it. Another was when I was, again, at Unruly. I used to run our Future Video Lab, where we had this like physical installation of like insights and, and it was kind of like improv meets education meets like pre-selling. And I had 2 days of press tours. And I was like on the train, we were at Long Island on my way into the city. And I just started like having, I guess it was like my first physical manifestations of stress, where, you know, like my stomach hurt, my mouth was going dry, and I had like the New York Times and the AP and like all these, you know, boom, 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 you know, 6 like for that whole day. And I realized, well, you know, like it's too late now. And it just kind of taught me that I will get through these things. And I think that that's really important. And I would say the third one is, again at Unruly, I was there for about 5 years. I wanted to be promoted to the SVP of my department. And Unruly was, you know, we had a woman CEO, we had all this unconscious bias training. I knew that they were, you know, delivering these insights to us. And when it became time for salary negotiation, you know, this can be really, really difficult. And I turned to the HR representative and I said, how much are you paying the men SVPs? Because I would like that.
That takes a lot of courage to ask that question.
Yeah.
You get very few windows in life to like have that pushy moment, and I knew that was one of them.
For me, I'm still fairly new in my career, but something I learned early on when I was still working part-time was there's always going to be this like need to almost compete with someone, and for me it was another girl, which I feel like I was constantly comparing myself, and we were both going for the same show, and I remember it was like it almost caused me so much animosity and like feeling tense in the workplace because all I was doing was comparing myself to her and you know what I thought that she brought to the table that I didn't, but it was always me in my own head putting myself down. And I worked for it really hard, and then eventually I did get the show full time at night, and it was me saying, oh, well, I feel bad, and I feel like I did something to her, even though I was like, well, I worked hard for this. So I think for me, a lesson learned was to really like put yourself out there, but when you do, make sure you acknowledge it, and like know that it's okay. Like sometimes it's going to, you know, it's going to work out for you, and sometimes it's not going to work out for you, but you could still be supportive of the other person. Like it doesn't need to be a comparison. And when, you know, women support each other, it's just in like a much better environment for everybody. And also, Nancy Cambino, who we talked about a little bit earlier.
I hope we're recording this. We can send this to
I
her.
know, we should send this to her. She'll love it. But she taught me, especially in the last few months, that whenever you feel uncomfortable, or maybe there's a little twinge of fear in you, that means that you're growing. And you can't grow without that feeling of being uncomfortable. So being uncomfortable every now and then is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think,
So I'm growing right now.
one of the, I think one of my biggest experiences, well, learning experiences, just happened, I guess, within the last like few years. And the biggest lesson that I learned was that I need to trust myself, and that I realized I really haven't been trusting myself 100%. And my lesson came to me was when I started the Music and Gaming Castle, because nobody understood. Anybody who I was talking to and explaining it to them, they just didn't get it. They was like, okay, and so you're gonna, okay, and so like, and it kind of made me doubt myself and what I was doing. But then once that little voice in the back of my head was like, Nina, don't worry, you don't need to worry about anything. Just do it. Just do what you know you want to do, and that's all you need to do. Just start it. And so I started it, and then I started getting positive feedback from the community that was benefiting from what I was doing, and not so much the people who wasn't in it. The people who wasn't in it, and I was explaining, they didn't get it. So to them, they're like, all right, you playing games. Like, it's games to them. They don't really understand what's going on. So once I got my first gaming placement, like the music that we were creating, it placed in a VR tech title, it was like, that was my confirmation. You know, it was like, no, I said this is what I'm gonna do, and then boom, you know, and Chris, my partner, he always says, from a trickle comes a stream. You know, so it was like, whoa, that was my little bit of confirmation from the universe that what I want to do is absolutely going to take off, and that I have to absolutely go 100% full force in it. And even if nobody else believes in it, I have to, because there's people who look up to me, whether or not I realize it, who's in that community, who's like, man, Nina, I love what you're doing, keep going at it. And getting a text from somebody saying, man, you know, your meditation stream really helped me today. I was in a bad place, and then I went to your channel and I meditated with you for the hour and I felt great. Thank you so much. You know, little things like that matter. So I'm gonna continue to, the biggest lesson that I learned was to trust your vision, just to trust it. Like, it doesn't have to exist yet. That's what you're here. You wasn't here before your parents came together and created you. So that's the same way these ideas come. When they come to you, you have to try and make it live and do the best that you can. And anybody that you're working with, they also have to see the vision in order to help you make it grow. You know, so
That's such a huge point. That's amazing.
that's what I've learned.
Absolutely. Have any of you ever felt like you didn't belong in the current industry that you're working in?
Not really.
That's good.
We belong here, girl.
Yeah.
We know where we belong.
Sometimes I'm like, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Who gave me all this responsibility? But for the most part, no. I mean, whether it's with writing or working in radio, like, I mean, in radio I feel pretty confident. You know, I've been there for a long time. I know what I'm doing. You know, I run a lot of stuff and I feel like, yes, like, you know, and that's a great feeling, like, to be doing something and be like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I could tell anybody. I could be on a bus in Portugal using sketchy Wi-Fi and blindly tell somebody how to load photos onto a website because that's how well I know how to do my job. Occasionally with writing and travel blogging, I'll feel like I only do it part-time and other people do it full-time, and I don't live a nomadic lifestyle, and then people who live a nomadic lifestyle kind of look down on those of us who have like homes and like do it, you know, for go on 2-week trips. But you know, as I've gotten older and I've been writing and working in that industry also for about a decade, I started to realize it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing in the industry. It matters what makes me happy and how it functions for me. And when COVID happened, I had a full-time job that I could support myself with, and I watched a lot of my friends who lived off their blogs go bankrupt. You know, there was no income. They were stuck in countries they couldn't get out of, and I was like, okay, like, you know, at least I have this backup, and I can pull up from there. And it's been like a 2-year crazy road of not really being able to travel. Or should you travel? Should you encourage other people to travel? Is it okay to go places where they still have restrictions but they're letting us in, you know? So sometimes with that I'll feel like I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but for them, like, I feel like everybody feels like that too, right? Like everybody has imposter syndrome sometimes, and that's also part of feeling uncomfortable and growing, right? If you feel uncomfortable with what you're doing and you press through it, then usually you come out on the other end and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. Like I learned something. Like even if the thing you learned was like, I'm not good at this thing, like you still learned it, so.
Oh my God, I see that one scene. Do you guys remember the show Girls?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there was this one scene where, you know, the main character went and she worked for a magazine, and there was like this little circle on a wall, and it was like your comfort zone, and then the rest of it's like the magic happens here. And especially my first startup, I would just imagine that one scene.
Yeah, that's
because
good.
like you have to get comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah, that's true.
important.
I would say, I mean, I've been in a lot of like conference rooms where I was like the only woman with like really powerful executives. And what I always told myself is you actually look worse if you don't speak. If you just sit there and put your head down, nobody's gonna know
That's so
your
true.
intelligence or your power. So it's like kind of like what you were saying is like the best thing that you can do is speak up and say, you know, what it is that you know to be true. And I think keeping that in mind helps put that anxiety at bay, and it's just like proving that you're meant to be in that room too. You deserve to be at that table.
I think for me, I think this is the first time I've actually felt like I belong, but the self-doubt is still something that I deal with, and with my job in particular, it is almost like you're acting a little bit, because once we come off air, it's like we're gonna go about our day, you know, if something bums us out, I'm gonna cry in Lidl while I'm shopping for like pasta, right? Like, I'm just gonna live my normal life, but like, when you're on, you have to be on, and then the rest of the day, for me at least, I sit and think, and I'm like, all right, what did I do wrong today? And like, how can I be better? Because it's always a thing about wanting to be better. But
It's okay to think you want to be better, but you shouldn't think about all the things you did wrong.
It's the negativity we were talking about.
A retrospective. What went right? What went wrong?
That's like my little thing. But I do feel like I belong in the way that I know what I'm doing and I really enjoy what I'm doing and the people I'm with. For me, and we've spoken about this, but at our company, we're working on it, but it's not very diverse right now. So when I look around, I don't see other people who look so much like me. There's only like 1 or 2 other people who do. And in that aspect, I'm like, I want to see more women of color in this industry, and more women in general, honestly. Which, like Tiana said, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of female leadership. But I think as a whole, women of color should be, accepted and brought in more. So that's kind of where I'm hoping that we head to soon.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Maybe moving in the right direction. And I don't even just mean our company, but the whole world, right?
Yeah.
So.
What are you guys trying to do to bring that in, though?
Well, there's a lot of training going on retention and stuff like that right now. So the company as a whole, which I don't know what you know about Cox Media Group, but we're we're the 3rd largest media company in the U.S. We struggle with diversity on Long Island. The company as a whole does not struggle with
Long Island
diversity.
branch,
Last year I sat in on something called the Garage Project, which was in direct response to what happened with George Floyd. And the company is incredibly diverse. So the company does hire, there's a lot of women of color in high positions, but on Long Island that's not the case. That might have something to do with the fact that Suffolk County is 85% white. And of the other 15%, it's mostly Hispanic. So, right off the bat, it's hard to bring people in. It could be the industry. It could be the colleges. There's a lot of things that we're looking into. The internship program is where we get most of our diverse hires, actually. And I don't know if it's a prejudice or a unconscious bias on the corporate side of people interviewing or looking at resumes or what exactly is going on, but Long Island does struggle with it. I do think that we have a lot of microaggressions that get lost on people who are white, and then when you're in a room full of white people don't always stand up, right? When someone says something uncomfortable or whatever. And I can think of a very specific example that happened to our only person of color who was working there, who was in sales, and had something very uncomfortable said in front of her, and no one really did anything about it. It kind of got brushed over, and it's is that the reason we're not retaining people? So, and it's kind of crazy, but I wasn't in the room for that. I would have liked to have been I definitely have said something.
She's queer.
I love saying things, but and I love making other people feel uncomfortable, but about stuff like that.
We love that.
But yeah, so it is something that we're working on. I'm currently sit on monthly talks with the head of our DE&I committee, trying to bring that in. But yeah, it's tough. It's hard. What do you do? How do you attract people, to a company or to a place where they're not reflected?
Right.
So if you're already not seeing yourself reflected, then are you what's going on here? Or are you oh, I'm going to come in and I'm going to break that barrier?
Right.
But it's hard, and representation is important, so we need to have that representation already, I think, to get other people to come in, and hopefully we'll figure out a way to do that.
Yeah.
Is any of this going on in any of you guys' other businesses?
A lot of the companies I've worked in lately have been small. I don't know that the makeup always reflects the general population. I think that's true. Tech has, I don't know, it has its own challenges where even, being a white woman, I'm a minority. So it's there's a lot of work to be done. And I know that, in terms of, you asked a great question, what are you actively doing about it? And I think that there are programs getting put in place, but a lot of it starts, so many years down the road in terms of STEM, in terms of, a diverse population going into computer science and starting, 20 years before the workforce even. So I don't have the answer, and I agree it's a problem, but it's,
I just make sure I'm when I'm interviewing, I make sure I'm diversely interviewing and trying to find the best person for the job. You know, one of the things they want to implement for us in our internship program is that 50% of the people that we hire for the internship program have to be diverse. And like I said, that could be a struggle for us considering the population percentages. But it isn't necessarily something that I haven't been able to already accomplish without even like being forced or, you know, company stipulated to do it. Because I just try to find the best person, you know, and they're also trying to do that at the corporate level. The woman who just got put into the head of the DE&I committee is a woman of color, and a couple of other people as well got moved up. And like, if we start seeing diverse leadership, maybe it will also encourage diverse applicants, right? And that, if you go on to like Glassdoor or you look up the company, like that stuff's there. So if it's not good, then you're not going to have applicants who, like, we're considered one of the top 5 companies to work for the LGBTQ community, which is nice. But that's not really reflected at our location, to be honest. So, you know, I don't know where that number is coming from. Obviously, corporate's a lot different. It's a lot bigger. Our headquarters are in Atlanta, which is obviously incredibly diverse. You know, Florida, Texas. So it is location for us a lot, but you know, that's not an excuse, and it shouldn't be an excuse.
True. Anybody else have anything
I
to
mean,
say?
in the audio, I have to say I see a lot of African Americans and women. I'm seeing a lot more women in studios in the city. I don't know if it's the same way out there, but women out, we're making our way in there, you know, slowly but surely. We're making our way in there, but not enough though. There's not enough. But as far as the gaming, there's not, I mean, that's the whole purpose, trying to diversify the whole gaming experience. I mean, down to the music. When I'm playing games, it's like, I don't relate to this. I've never even heard this genre. Like, this is popular? What? Like, so that is the culture shock and just the blend that I want to happen.
You know, I do think some ways that things start to get better is these worlds are opening up. So for example, you know, it's so easy to forget, like Minecraft started out as an independent game. And I think now that there are, like exactly what you were just saying, indies can grow, and you don't necessarily need a computer science degree or, you know, the typical path, you know, of whatever. So anyone with an interest, I would say just, you know, start dabbling, start trying things, you know, put your foot out there, take a risk, because it is I don't have the right word, but like the door is more open.
I think it's conversations like this. It's having DE&I panels. It's people recognizing like there's a problem and we have not done
Having an
anything to
open
fix
discussion.
it. Yeah, like we can say like we fixed it because of, you know, equal rights, but saying equal rights and then watching it come to fruition are two totally different things, right? So I think it's about taking action and talking to your peers and finding what the problems are and working on actually realizing where the unconscious bias comes from or why these things aren't happening, and that's never going to happen unless you have uncomfortable conversations.
Right, and I think the flip side is that this is what it is, open platforms. That was the word I was looking for, right? So you have SoundCloud. Anyone can upload anything to SoundCloud and see what takes off. So, right, anyone can make a Roblox game. Anyone can make a Fortnite creative map. Like these platforms are becoming open, so the doorways are more open.
Well, being in a male-dominated field, what advice would you give young women or female just coming into your industry?
All right, I'll go. One, you know, show up, speak up. You know, I think that after my first gaming internship, I was at a company called 3DO, and it was like Trip Hawkins' other gaming company other than EA. And I fell in love. I went back to college. I declared a computer science major, and I was like the only woman in any of my classes. And that like felt really weird at first, and then you get comfortable with the discomfort. Like the guys wouldn't talk to me. It was just a very different culture. But I think that it's important to not let that stop you. You know, my last company was an Israeli tech startup where I was managing, you know, like former generals in the Israeli military. And you know, you just need to speak up and make yourself heard and work with people.
Yeah, and you can't care too much what other people think, right? You have to just go for stuff. It's like what you were saying before. You have to believe in yourself, you have to trust yourself, and if other people don't get what you're saying or what you're doing, eventually you will find someone who does, and that dream or that idea will come to fruition. So it's like, don't second guess yourself. Like, you know, throw out all the ideas, even bad ideas, right? Because all good ideas came from people just throwing out ideas, you know, and so I guess it's just to piggyback off what you said, because obviously that's also what you need to be doing.
And not just have an idea, but to be like passionate about it and to be loud about it, you know, because you can have an idea and you could be like, oh, hey, like, I don't know, I think this is kind of cool, right? Like, be loud and stand behind what you say, and people will see that and be like, oh snap, like she knows what she's talking about.
Be proud and loud.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's the quote? Well-behaved women never make history.
Yeah, really make history. Yeah.
Well, and also just advocating for yourself. It's kind of like what you were saying, when like people don't believe in your idea and you know it's right, you have to keep pushing. I find that, like, you know, I come from a digital marketing background, and so often I'll go into a meeting and like talk about like TikTok and like what is a really great marketing idea to do on TikTok, and it sounds so weird and trivial to other people, but I know that this is what's going to work. Whoever thought a guy skating on a skateboard with cranberry juice was going to change so many, you know what I mean? And like people look at you like you're crazy when you talk about ideas, but you have to stick to it because you know that that's the right thing. And just keep, you know, keep believing in yourself, even if you got to fake it.
Fake it till you make it.
It can be scary to put your ideas out there. So I would also say to, you know, any young person starting, support each other. You know, so if someone is brave enough to, you know, like you were saying, you know, say it with confidence. Even if you say it meekly, you know, maybe someone in the room can back that. And then also as a manager, it's really important to make sure that the quiet people are specifically asked if they have anything they'd like to add to the conversation.
Yes, encouraging the women that work for you. That's something that I really try to focus on with the women that report to me, is like making sure that they make their voice heard and instilling that confidence in them. I feel like it's our responsibility as you work your way up the ladder to help nurture the girls coming up, because, you know, they're still learning the things that we learned, and I wish that I had more women to tell me it's okay to talk in a meeting, it's okay to say that idea, you know, so making sure that you're, you know, looking out for those girls that were where you were. You know?
Even to that point, like, kind of like putting yourself out there, like not just in the department that you're in, but like maybe get the opinions from women in, you know, the department next door, or, you know, like send an email to someone that maybe you wouldn't have necessarily talked to, because every woman has their own unique story, and we could all learn from each other's.
Absolutely.
And and then to add, yes. I love what everybody said. And just to add on to what everybody was saying, I would say another thing is don't be afraid to ask for, well, more so don't be afraid not to do everything yourself if you're starting something.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because that was another thing that I learned. Like I can't, and I'm not going to be successful if I try to do everything myself, and that's where learning to trust the right people comes in, you know, because
and I think like as women, we feel like we have to take on the whole load, you know, but
that's why I'm a woman.
I feel like, you know, I went through that too, where you just feel like you have to do everything, and it's okay to delegate.
Because women have many roles.
Yes.
They're a mom, they're a wife, they're a teacher, everything.
And they're expected to be all those things while still performing at a high level,
That is
and not
true.
expected to have like a mental breakdown.
Right, and then if you're not performing at a high level, it's like, oh, see, like, you know, because she has kids and she does this, and then
What's wrong with her? Are there any upcoming projects you're working on that you'd like to talk about today?
Well, I'm really excited. I'm working with Long Island Against Domestic Violence. This is a project I'm really excited to start working on. Obviously, this month is Women's International Month. Next month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. and unfortunately, something that happens too often to women. So with me having the platform that I do, and we have mostly female listeners, lots of young girls, the girls who are maybe just getting on dating apps, or the girls who are, headed off to college, even like the mom who grocery shops at the end of the night and doesn't feel safe in the parking lot. I'm working on promoting safety for women. I'm trying to get like a self-defense class off and running, so every woman can have the opportunity to take a self-defense class. And yeah, just partnering with LIADV and kind of giving some helpful tips to the women out there.
I like that.
Any other projects?
Lots, girl. I was like, which one should I say first?
All of them. All of them.
I guess I'll go with what's already kind of in action. They're just looking forward to doing lots of gaming events, and maybe possibly bringing them out of the virtual and doing one in the physical. So bringing the meta community and doing like a similar thing physically, the Physiverse. So uplifting things like that, and with the studio side, the MusicWorks virtual studio, also helping to get lots more people set up at home and recording so that they can, get more professional sounding quality off. Hey, that's about it. Oh, I'm sorry, producer challenge. We got lots of challenges. I'm like, oh, I had a whole list. How come you only said? Yeah, we got producer challenges coming out, which, one of the projects that MusicWorks released in 2018, we won a Cuban Grammy for Ibu Keke.
Oh, congrats, congrats.
Thank you. So we're going to start uplifting and doing more activities in the community, producer challenges, giving away cash prizes, interviews, that sort of in-studio experiences, that sort of thing.
Cool.
Just my work at 1RPM, we're a label and a distributor, which means, if you wrote a song today and wanted to put it up in streaming platforms, you could upload it to our platform. And we work with, not only the bigger artists, but the more up and coming artists too, and teaching them like how to grow their socials, how to get their music out there. I always say that the reason why I do what I do is because I was a kid that needed music, you know what I mean? I needed that emotional support of the music, and so how do we help get people's music out there to those kids that need to hear music? And so we're working a lot with those up and coming artists on how to grow their social platforms, because we think it's second nature to people in 2022, but it's not. And so really trying to help those up and coming artists.
At the radio station, we are the media sponsor for Girls Inc., if you know who they are, and they work on bold future female leaders, so we're doing a couple of things with them, a couple of career panels, doing a resume workshop with them. I sit on a couple of committees, so hoping to be more involved with them, bring them into the radio station. Like I said, it's really exciting to work with young people and to watch them grow. And then on the blogging side, I'm doing like my first press trip in 2 years to Spokane, Washington, and then which will be on like wineries and food and drink, and then I'm actually going to Kansas City in May to do a whole thing on the birth of like Motown blues and Black history in Kansas City, which is really exciting as well. So. Different spectrums.
For me, it sounds far less lofty, but something I'm learning. I'm 2 months in at my role, and one thing I really love about Super Awesome is we have a lot of free tools available. So anyone can go online and get KidAware certified to learn how to do kid-safe advertising that doesn't track personal information. Removes data from the process instead of ad tech that just keeps like, Facebook is so evil with all the data that's tracked and like all of these things. It's just very frustrating. But I'm trying to now, sift it through my organization and find all of these gems. Like we teach our influencers how to do, responsible advertising. I'm learning all about, there's something called the AADC, the Age Appropriate Design Code, where, again, having a 12 and a 14-year-old, I'm learning just how addictive video games are like set up to be. YouTube with the auto, you know, the next video will play that's like auto picked for you. The infinite scroll, right, on like Instagram, and you look up like an hour later and you're like, where is my life gone?
Yeah.
And this is hard enough, you know, on like grown-ups. Yeah. But you know, for people whose brains are still developing up until the age of like the early 20s, like this is just, it is so upsetting to watch. And you know, it used to be pre-COVID, at least at home, we used to really monitor computer time and like try to put these limits in place. And then when like the world shut down and everything moved online, that went out the window immediately. So even just watching how that occurs. So I'm really passionate right now about getting some of these, you know, acronyms, these very unexciting acronyms, surfaced so that we can all do better and at least be aware of the challenges and, you know, just let people enjoy the internet and the metaverse, but like, you know, let them leave when they're ready to.
I think that's, you know what, that's an underlying thing that people do not speak about, because I find like I have to, like with all my streams, I do streaming on my own personal account. And then with the castle, I'm like, I have to do a children's segment. I have to do something which caters to 16 and under, because I want my content to be towards, you know, my audience, you know, so I need that safety zone. And then, so I've already got my nice little partner. We're gonna start up the show, our nice show. And then, but I'm thinking about, okay, now realistically, now how am I gonna promote the show, like, appropriately according to these the kids' guidelines? Like, what are these things I have to start thinking about that I don't have to worry about on my other stuff, you know? So, yeah, that's
COPPA compliance, CARU, the AADC, like there are all of these, you know, they're buried deep, like under the Better Business Bureau and all of these other organizations, but there's a ton of tools out there.
You got to write them all down. You need a pen and paper.
I do. I'm gonna be in everybody's office. Everybody. The show, I'll be like, girl, listen, good morning. Come on. They think I'm joking.
Oh, you're by yourself?
So now we would like to open up the conversation to our audience. If anyone has a question they need to ask or want to ask.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Let
don't
them
be
fly.
shy.
Let them fly.
Hi, my name's Ariana. I'm an audio student here, and I find that I'm like a multi-passionate person. Like I want to do a lot of things. Like I'm writing music, recording music. I've started a company with CJ over there. We're doing music videos.
Cool.
So how would you go?
Okay.
I guess this is a two-part question. One, how would you go about managing your time and prioritizing when you have a lot of different things that you want to do? And two, how would you go about networking and putting yourself out there to, you know, start building an audience with a bunch of different things?
For starters, what you're doing right now, putting yourself in a situation. You came into a place, now we all know who you are, we all know what you're doing, we know you got a nice team behind you that you're doing video with. I would say that's my first piece of advice.
I would say don't be afraid to message people like on LinkedIn. When I was at Islands, I had a girl reach out to me on LinkedIn. She was a huge Demi Lovato fan, and it was her dream to work with Demi. And I had a meeting with her, and she became my assistant, and then she got promoted, and she got promoted, and she's the second in command of digital marketing at Island right now. So you never know what could happen. So reach out to people, try to have those conversations.
Even to reach out to the people who may have graduated before you in your own, school department, because those people are all off on their own journeys, and you know where they ended up, right? But if you reach out to each one of them, kind of get a feel for how they got there, they might be willing to be like, hey, I heard about this position, and I think you'd be perfect for it,
And this industry is all about networking, so you have to do that. I would say, kind of to piggyback off what you were saying, that internships, go for internships of where you think you might want to be, and even if it's not exactly where you want to be, use those contacts to then go to other places. And how many people that interned for us and then now they work for ESPN, they work for New York One,
NBC,
they're all over the place. And like in this industry, networking is so important. And like no matter what internship you're doing, or what, foot in the door position you have, if you are, engaging and inquisitive and intelligent, people will help you, people will give you guidance, people will pay it forward. And that's really, when you're starting out, that's like the most important thing. Absolutely.
I'm not entrenched in the audio world, but I would imagine networking is quite similar. And that's a very vague term, like network, okay, now what? But I like the idea of reaching out on LinkedIn, finding people and setting small, achievable goals. Like I will reach out to one person a week. I have a goal of like one virtual coffee. And then as you check that box, it feels really good and you can tell you're making progress.
And also with your question about time management, I think the most important thing to do is listen to your body and listen to when you need a second for yourself to breathe. Because when you pile on all of these things, and it's great that you're so passionate and you have all of these different things that you want to do, it will eventually catch up to you. And you won't even see it coming, by the way. One day you'll just be like, wow, I'm tired. And then you're out, right? So you want to take care of your body. Make sure you're hydrated, getting plenty of sleep. Also, a planner, a physical planner. I know it sounds really dorky, but I'm a sucker for a good planner.
I love my planner. I live by it.
Yeah, even having it in your phone is good, but if you physically write it down, you'll kind of be able to plan out your day better and whatever you need to get done. So I always go with a good planner.
Yeah, and think about your strengths, and then think about the person that you're working with strengths, and start there. If you're really good at social media and marketing, and they're really good at in-person networking, then you guys have to focus on those strengths, because trying to do everything isn't going to work. And then pick a focal point and then go from there. If you're starting a company, it has to start with the ideas and the the beginning parts of that. You can't just be like, okay, well, I want to do all these things, but you don't even have a starting point. So delegate and then figure out your strengths. Work with people who have completely different strengths than you, because that's the only way to really get something going.
Thank you.
You're
No
welcome.
problem.
Anybody else?
Come on, we weren't that interesting.
We're going to have to start this interview over.
So my question would be applying for the workforce. As a woman coming into the workforce, what do we need to be prepared for what we're getting ourselves into? Should we have a big portfolio behind us, or do we just how do we approach in coming into the workforce?
What do you want to do?
That's
Well, my focus is journalism, so but basically for anybody. But if I wanted to go into journalism, what should I have going into that job?
I would recommend starting a blog. Pick something that you're interested in. It's always better to have a niche and just start producing content. Start applying or seeing for online publications, places that are looking for content for whether it's lifestyle or whatever, and write about everything. Try a little bit of everything. Do you have a focus or something you're specifically interested that you want to write about, or?
Currently not yet, but I'm trying to write a little bit about everything that happens throughout the school. I've done some games, or I've done events, or just little things.
Yeah, perfect. You want a diverse portfolio, and obviously if you're passionate about something, that'll come through in the work too, and then hopefully you can work towards doing that. But doing a little bit of everything really does help you, because then if there's an open position at ESPN and you don't really care about sports, but they're offering it to you, you would take it, because it would be crazy not to take it, right? Or if you have to write about finance, that might not be the most interesting thing to you, but then you're going to do it because that's how you build a name for yourself. That's how people see you, and then once you start building yourself content, and it doesn't matter how many people are seeing this content. I mean, I started my blog and nobody was reading it, but I was still running around to places being like, hey, I'll write an article about your hotel. Hey, I'll put you on social media. There was no ROI, but I was getting all of this experience. And then after a while, people were coming to me and being like, oh, I read that article you wrote on this place. Can you come stay with me and write, about mine? And it was like, oh, okay, I think 10 people read that first article and I knew every single one of them, but eventually that doesn't matter. So it's about the content you're putting out there, So I would just say if you're passionate about writing and you want to be a journalist, that's how you have to do it. Journalism's hard.
Yeah. I think it's about trying different mediums too. So if you're passionate about writing, go for that. Maybe, you know, being a video journalist is something that you've never thought of, but it might be something that you become passionate about. Also, Tiana mentioned this a little bit earlier, but look for those internships, whether it's, you know, with a magazine, a digital publication of sorts, because those to have on your resume, like that's basically what got me my job. Like you could turn into something way bigger than you ever imagine it. So I would definitely look for internships.
I have mundane questions. Do you have a college newspaper here?
We do, yeah.
Do you write for it?
I have before.
Yeah.
So that would be that's a good start.
Yeah.
And if there are certain job titles that you're going after, I don't know what entry-level journalism titles would be, but I would look for those people on LinkedIn. One, you could ask them questions, but two, I would just surf their LinkedIns and see how they've already gotten a job in journalism. How do they position themselves? What are they surfacing? What types of articles or media are they attaching to their LinkedIn profile? Because any job that you apply for, the first thing that they're doing is they're going to start Googling you and looking you up on LinkedIn. And if you are competing against someone else for that role, you'll want to make sure that you have the background that people in this field have demonstrated they have.
And it'll also, like what Ali was saying about diversifying what platforms you work on. Like when I first graduated, well, when I was in college, I worked for a newspaper, like I interned in a newspaper, and I hated it. And for the longest time throughout my life, I thought I wanted to work for a newspaper. And then I was like, oh, this is terrible. I don't want to be part of this. And I worked for a magazine and also didn't love it. So it's like, you need to do those things too to figure out what you want to do, because you would rather figure them out earlier so you can start focusing once you have the experience, opposed to taking a position and like just being miserable in that position because you never really searched it out. But like going on LinkedIn and finding people who work for, you know, newspapers or who are also journalists or whatever the case may be, a lot of times they freelance. They're always looking for freelancers.
Yeah.
So that's a great way. It's like low risk. It's a good experience, and then it's all stuff you can put on your resume. Yeah. So
I would also say follow writers that you admire on socials and see how they're presenting themselves on social media, interact with their social media, think about your social media presence as well, because that is, you know, a somewhat public-facing job as well, you know.
Also, be open to constructive criticism. And I think that something you can do is after you write something, don't just leave it in a journal to sit, you know? You could share it with your parents or your siblings or your friends, and like let people get an eye on it, and like make sure, you know, the way that, because like sometimes like we are so close to our own work, right, that we don't see it's like little teeny flaws. Yeah. But if someone else is looking at it with an open perspective and a new eye, then they might be able to be like, all right, this is great, but here's where you could tweak it just a little bit to get that extra, you know, little plus on it.
Yeah, I can't proofread myself for anything because I don't see anything. I don't even see my spelling mistakes sometimes. So I often will put it over to somebody else. And starting your own blog is just a good way to kind of get used to how many, like filling space, how to talk about things. It's low risk because you don't even, it doesn't have to be big for you to get that experience writing or to kind of figure out how you want. I mean, my blog has changed like 3 times over the course of the 10 years that I've been running it too, right? Like when I started, I was a backpacker, so I was writing about cheap travel, and then I started to get older and I'm like, well, my audience isn't staying at hostels anymore, so now I have to pivot. So it's also like, it's just a creative way to kind of keep yourself going and keep yourself accountable too. Like set yourself deadlines, give yourself stuff to work on, because that's also part of writing.
Thank you.
We have another question. And another one.
Yes, girl. Just like DJ
Got it. Now we're good. Now we're popular.
DJ Khaled, just like another one.
So I was gonna ask, like, in terms of people that are starting out, like, what would you say is like some of the best types of skills to focus in on as you're starting in the industry? All of them, like each one.
Make sure that you can like just have a conversation with someone. I mean, you're doing great, like already eye contact, like we're having a conversation here. But I feel like so many people in today's day and age, they're just so like this, that they forgot about human communication and connection. And I feel like it definitely, I feel like it shows, like when people don't know how to have a conversation.
I actually say this all the time because like I'd say the number one question I get from like intern candidates is like, what do you look for in an intern? And I always say the same thing. We can teach you how to edit, we cannot teach you how to be engaging. So it's very important to have a personality, especially when you're fighting for jobs with everyone who has the same experience as you, right? Like everybody in their early 20s has similar experiences. So how do you stand out? You stand out through your personality, not just your body of work. So if you're going on interviews or you're interacting with people, even in settings like this, and there's no engagement, no one's gonna remember you. The interns who get hired, the interns who do well in this industry, you know, they come in with big personalities, you know, and they're engaging and they're excited and they're happy to be there. And those are things that you can't teach somebody a lot of times, unfortunately.
Also, I would say put in the work and be more helpful than everyone else, right? Like, I love when an intern is like, hey, do you need anything? Like, can I help you with anything? Oh, I know you're working on that project. I have an idea for that. How can I be more involved? Because I think that sometimes people get scared or people just don't want, they just, you know. And I think that that's how I did it when I was an intern, and I look for that in interns that I have, is like that willingness to be like, how do I get more involved? You know, people want to see that you're hungry. And so that's a really important trait to show.
Yeah, I would say the one mistake that a lot of interns make is they get through the door, and once they get through the door, then this, I don't know where it comes from, but this feeling of entitlement comes into play. And that, once you have that, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're supposed to be here to be in service, not to see how you could be served. That doesn't, you know, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one step at a time. The first step is get that job. And the first job is that really important resume builder. And once you have a job, I think the rest falls into place a little bit. But then it's, how do I keep this job? How do I perform in this job? I love the idea of, you know, ask people, how can I help, right? Just be hungry, and you're there to learn.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that if you're really driven in that respect, it'll show through. I've hired a lot of interns. There was the guy who fell asleep at his desk, and people felt a need to come tell me that my intern was sleeping at his desk, and that was awkward. It was awkward for me. It was awkward for him. You know, then there's then there's the intern, you know, positive intern stories. I remember once, again, this unruly was a terrifying job for me, so far outside of my comfort zone. And I was flying across the country where I was like going to single-handedly like set up this booth for a trade show. And I got on the plane, and then 6 hours later, I got off the plane in San Francisco to the following sequences of voicemails. Ooh, thought that we had Wi-Fi, but it turns out that's not included. I'm gonna look into this. Okay, great. You know, the next voicemail. All right, still looking into the Wi-Fi. But by the time I like got through all of the voicemails, I'm still at the airport. Wi-Fi had been resolved. This person had checked with IT, who had found a like Sprint store around the corner from my hotel where I could go in and pick up the thing that had been pre-ordered. And just, and like that peace of mind was amazing. So just solve real problems, be
Google
proactive.
It. Like literally that's such like a pet peeve, is like, could you Google this? Could you figure it out for yourself? Show that initiative of like, there's no issue with asking questions, and it's totally okay to say, I don't know how to do this, but if you could figure it out on your own or try first,
If we had ended at, thought there was Wi-Fi, I was wrong, like that would have been a disastrous way to end. But go to the Sprint store and ask for Bob, like, I could do that.
All right, thank you, good.
So on the behalf of the FTC and the Business Club, we want to thank the audience members and our 5 wonderful panelists for coming out for Women in Entertainment. We hope you guys loved the panel. Hope you guys, it was worthwhile for you guys. If you guys would like to come out in the hallway and network with our panelists, you guys are more than welcome to. We do have refreshments and coffees and water outside for you guys.
Thank you. Oh, thank you guys. Wait, coffee too?
Yes, we have coffee.
I know. All right, we out. Let's go get it.
Time to be charged.
Thank you.